You know, if there's one thing I learned after watching Hellraiser on Hulu, it's this. I'm gonna mind my own business. I see a box or a crazy artifact? Nope, keep it over there. It's not mine, I don't want it. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and today we're going to get into my spoiler-free thoughts on Hellraiser, the reimagining of the classic horror movie of the same name. A huge thank you to Hulu for giving me the chance to watch this early for review, guys. You can also watch it on Hulu October 7th. It's rated R, so don't watch it with the kids. And you might not want to watch it with your parents or anyone who might have a soft stomach. You need an iron one for this film. It's directed by David Bruckner and it stars Jamie Clayton as Pinhead, Odessa as Riley, Goran Visnjic as Roland, Voight, and Drew Starkey as Trevor. And like I mentioned, this is a reimagining of the classic film, but does it hold its own weight and is it worth your time? I'll answer both of those questions in a bit, but before we get started, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you do too, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and tap on that bell, y'all, and get loud in the comments when you see this and let me know. Did it make you sick too? Because it made me sick. And hit the thumbs up button for more reviews just like this. Alrighty, y'all. Well, you know what? I'm gonna get right into what this movie's about, all my positives and my negatives. 2022's Hellraiser is all about a young woman named Riley who's struggling with addiction, and she comes into possession of an ancient puzzle box, and she's also unaware that its purpose is to summon the Cenobites, which opens up a whole world of problems. Now listen, I'm not a big fan of the 1987 horror movie. Now I had big issues with that film. Honestly, the story wasn't explained enough. The Cenobites were barely on screen and it was pretty gory, but it just didn't have much substance. So I didn't fall in love with that film like I know a lot of others did. But is this movie better? Well, there are some areas that are pretty darn okay in this movie, so let's get right into my positives, and it begins with this, guys. The prosthetics, the makeup, and the CGI, well, they're all on point. It's brutal, unforgiving, and creepy from start to finish, you guys, and we really do begin to see the full extent of the Cenobites and their kills midway through the film. And of course, it all culminates with a gory third act. It is wild. If you came here for these kills, man, you're probably going to be satisfied, but I thought all that work technically was really solid, enough to where it sold me on some scenes, and I actually grimaced many times, and I'm very glad I didn't eat dinner before this film. But yeah, I do think that this movie's strongest area is prosthetics and makeup and all that CGI work, especially in that third act. Mamma mia. But even outside of the technical aspects of this movie, I felt that the acting, even though it's not particularly good in this movie, there are some standouts. There are actually two standouts here. Let's begin with the actress Odessa, who plays Riley. She sold me on this performance, someone who is struggling with addiction and then comes upon this box, and boy oh boy is she going through it throughout this film, guys. But I do feel like with each argument, with each moment where she was frightened, she sold me. And you can tell that she is usually the best actor on screen. Whenever she is in shouting matches with her co-stars, she's usually the one that comes off as someone who is more natural than the others. But then you have the Cenobites, and well, Jamie Clayton leads that bunch, guys. Let me tell you, she plays the priest, or of course our new Pinhead, and man is she good here. Unfortunately, there's not nearly enough screen time, but her moments with Odessa were very convincing. And let me be honest with y'all, that Pinhead reveal scene was really well done, very well directed, and I thought that Jamie Clayton herself does a really good job in this film. She, to me, is the best actor in this movie. Yes, I wish she did have more time on screen, but for the most part, not only was she terrifying, but boy, I felt she was a screen grabber. She just took that attention from me every time she was on screen. And I wasn't trying to compare this movie too much to the original film, but compared to that first movie, at least this reboot builds out the world much better. There's a decent amount of world building, even though I feel like the movie doesn't necessarily commit to that too much. I feel that even in the second act, we get enough of an explanation about the Cenobites that makes sense, because in the first film, guys, we didn't get too much. It just felt kind of all over the place with them, and they came and they went, they came and they went, and we were supposed to be freaked out, but I watched it and was not scared. Now, I wasn't scared in this movie either, but I will tell you that we spent a lot of time understanding the Cenobites and their world, so at least they flesh out these characters a lot more. But y'all, outside of that, I gotta be honest, there were not any other positive takeaways. So let's begin with my negatives. And man, I just wish that this movie was worth 2 hours, but it's not. Outside of the gore fest, there's really not much else that this movie has to offer, at least not for me. The first hour of this movie, guys, is so rough. It's tough to get through. It's a slog. And I almost felt like, man, this movie's not going anywhere. It's 2 hours long, and I mean, where are we going? Can we move this along a little bit more? And I feel that this movie didn't do the best job at pacing itself. And the film has potential, don't get me wrong, it just never really reaches its potential. Now, the screenplay is written by Ben Collins and Luke Petrowski, and okay, I feel like they had a good sense of where the story wanted to go, but there's a lot of bad dialogue in between all of these big kill sequences, and honestly, there were some lackluster stretches where I, again, was really not interested by anything I was watching on screen. The supporting characters clearly weren't getting much love in terms of the writing, and I just feel that this movie could have been stronger and maybe even tightened up. So if this movie maybe were a little bit shorter, we possibly could have gotten a better film. There's also a cheesy antagonist here, and the writing itself is cheesy, so too often does that happen, and it throws me all out of the mix. But speaking about breaking immersion, there's also a twist in this movie that made me scratch my head. Guys, sometimes twists in movies work. Most times, if they're not done well, it can be a huge distraction, and that's exactly what happened in this film. Now, I won't tell you what happens and when it happens, but it didn't work for me. And the last bit I'll talk about when it comes to the writing is I feel like a lot of our characters and their motivations weren't built up properly. Things kind of happen abruptly in this movie, and sometimes characters and what they do in this film, that also makes me feel kind of confused. I mean, the movie doesn't do much to lead to that, so why oh why does this happen? And I'm thinking more about the decisions they made versus the outcomes of what could happen. I'm not locked in, I'm just thinking about everything else. So I wish the movie did a much better job at building up to those character motivations and explaining in a way without being too expository why it happens. However, there's a lot of tell, not a lot of show in this movie. And for as much as I feel like some of the set pieces were really good, I'd say overall that this is a lot of spectacle without much weight. And to go back to the supporting cast again, I feel like those actors, they don't do much to add to the film. Instead, I feel they subtract from this movie, and I wanted this film honestly to hit that extra gear, get into that next gear, and never gets there. Is it an insane bloodfest by the end? Absolutely, but there's really not much else in this movie. So overall, you guys, I do think that Hellraiser has some shining moments where you get some crazy kills. The prosthetics, the technical aspects, they work for me, and there's a couple standouts, but I just don't feel like this movie is any bit better than the original. And that's not to even say it's worse than the original, because I feel like this is almost right on par. I felt the same way after finishing the original film. I watched it for the first time this weekend, and I thought, okay, that's it. That's what people were raving about. And I watched this reboot and I thought, that's it. Are people even gonna rave about this movie? Now, I did want to like this film, and I thought that maybe they could build upon some of the issues I had with the original movie. They do that sometimes, especially with the world building, and I feel that Jamie Clayton is a better actor than anyone over the course of both of these movies. But guys, I just can't tell you this movie did anything for me. So Hellraiser is kind of a pass. I mean, if you're invested in this franchise, you're gonna watch it anyway, so go ahead and eat your heart out. But for someone who's not invested like me and doesn't really get the hype, I've seen the original, I've seen this reboot, and both films don't do it for me. I have no reason to believe that this film is really, and it's gonna take off. You know, I do think that it's gonna hit its core audience, but it might just be that. This movie could have been so much better. There was potential, it just never got there for me. So there you have it, guys. That's my real review of Hellraiser. Again, it hits Hulu on October 7th. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Or do you feel like you're right in the middle on this movie? And hey, hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more reviews just like this. We got New York Comic Con coming up this weekend, so we're going to be talking a lot about movies and TV shows and looking at you, the Dragon Prince, and I cannot wait. Alrighty, y'all, I'm gonna go and pray. Yep, do a lot of prayer after this movie. Alrighty, y'all, again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.